Hello and welcome to a new episode of Other Record Labels. I'm your host, Scott Orr, where we talk about the art and culture of running a record label. And today we're talking about that uncomfortable habit and bad habit that we find ourselves in, where we compare ourselves to other record labels. And that's what I want to talk about today. And I'll be honest, I do catch myself doing this quite a lot, and not necessarily in a sinister way or a bad way. And sometimes I copy other labels and I compare myself to other record labels. And I think that's a problem. And we're going to talk about that today. In fact, I have three reasons why I think it's bad to compare ourselves to other record labels. But then I have three ways that I think that we can compare ourselves to other labels in a healthy way and in a productive way. So that's what I want to talk about today. You know, if you are looking to other labels for advice or for inspiration, or if you're just outright copying them, I actually have put together something helpful for you, and it is out of the 40 or 50 odd record labels that I've spoken to, I asked a handful of them to write something specific to share some advice on a certain facet of the music industry to share with our listeners. And so I put that together in a free guide called the Free Guide for Record Labels. I'm not sure what it's called actually, but anyway, go to our website, otherrecordlabels.com, where you can download that for free. And it has just a bunch of advice from labels. And that's actually what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about how important it is to get advice and to get help and inspiration from labels, but without comparing ourselves to them or in an unhealthy way or competing with them or outright copying them. So that's what I want to talk about today. This is not like a sinister episode in any way, but I hope that it encourages you and helps you catch some of some bad habits in how we often get tempted to compare ourselves. And really, when you think about it, this happens on social media I think is the biggest thing. And it's probably the biggest problem with social media, not just in the music space, but far more in life. And we often compare the size of our house or the clothes that we're wearing or how we look with other people on social media. This is not news. I'm not saying anything groundbreaking. We all know this. And that's why a lot of people have gotten rid of social media. Good for you. But I actually find myself doing the same thing with other labels and other businesses. I don't ever look at somebody and wish that like I had a six pack like them. That's not really a temptation for me, but I do look at some people and think, man, they've got a really cool deluxe vinyl issue. I wish my label had that. So let's talk about three things or three reasons why it's bad to be comparing ourselves to other record labels. Number one, and this is something that I've totally struggled with, but number one is it makes us do things that we shouldn't be doing. Because we see a label do something that we are really impressed by or we really admire, then we think, okay, we need to do that as well. Maybe that's something as simple, and this has been the case for me, but maybe that's something as simple as a sale, like a 4th of July sale or a Black Friday sale or a holiday sale. A label launches the sale and it's actually Black Friday, and I'm like, oh man, I should have done the sale too. And so I quickly scramble together some artwork and throw up an advertisement halfway through the day. And so the problem with this is that it ends up making us do these things that we really shouldn't do because we didn't plan for it properly. And in the end, what happens is we do these things and we do a bad job at them. Whereas some of these other labels have been more strategic and they've planned out some of their strategies. And so we're just copying them on the fly and we end up doing a bad job. We also end up doing things that we're not gifted at, or we do things that we're not passionate about. And so maybe, I remember I wanted to get really heavy into releasing cassettes because there was a lot of labels that were doing it. I loved cassettes. I was really admiring the labels who were doing it well. And I bought all of this, I just threw my pen. I bought all of this stuff, like some cases and some blanks and some labels and everything, because I wanted to make all of these tapes for my label. I ended up just not being very good at doing it. I didn't have the patience to figure out how to do it. And I just kind of, now over in the corner of my studio, I have a box of tapes that have gone unused. And so, but this came from this thing that I was just copying these other labels because it was something I admired that they did and I wanted to do it as well. And so when that happens, we end up doing things that we're not gifted in and we're not passionate about. And also, using the same analogy, when I released these tape versions of records that we had already released, our audience just wasn't interested in it. That wasn't who our audience was. I love tapes. I know there's millions of people out there who love tapes, but our audience was like, what are these? Why are you doing this? I'm not interested in it. We weren't a tape label to begin with. And so that was a huge problem. And the stuff that I urgently created and didn't do a great job at, they didn't sell. And so that shows me that even my audience wasn't asking for it. And so when we copy labels because we admire them or we're jealous of a vinyl pressing that they've done, or they're doing a cool merch line of hats or sweatshirts or something, then we think, oh, we should do that too. But we haven't really stopped to ask whether our audience was expecting that, or our audience wanted that from us. So this is one of the reasons why I think it's bad to compare ourselves to labels, is because it makes us do something that we shouldn't be doing. Number two, it prevents us from being innovative or creative. This is another huge problem. Part of running a label is people look to us because of our tastes and our creativity and the way that we curate art and the way that we discover new artists and share that with the world. That's the foundation of running a record label. And so when we're copying other labels, or we're comparing ourselves to other labels, and we see this label has signed an artist or is being successful with an artist in a certain genre, and it's a genre we're not doing, and it's a type of artist we're not doing, and then we decide, you know what, maybe I need to go find an artist like that. And what that ends up being is that we're competing against them in their own race instead of running our own race. And I just think that's a problem. I think that competition is the opposite of creativity, and we need to not ignore, but you can admire and you can respect what other people are doing, but really focus on what you're good at, what you're passionate about, and what you're the most creative at, because that's ultimately what people have come to you for. That's what people love about your label. That's what artists love about working with you, is being yourself, for lack of a cheesy expression. So just remember, number two, it prevents us from being innovative and creative. When we look at other people, we model ourselves off of them. There is I'm going to talk about this in a couple minutes, but there is a very healthy way to be inspired by other labels. That happens to me all the time. That is the whole point of the show, by the way. But that's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is seeing something and saying, oh, I should do that. And we miss out on the opportunity to come up with something brand new, something exciting that the world is waiting for us to do. And of course, the third and final thing why it's bad to compare ourselves is it's bad for our mental health. And you know this. And this goes back to the issue of social media and what social media can do to us and has been doing to people. And years ago, I would watch these labels who had this great Twitter presence. They were funny. They had huge engagement with their audience. And I was just so depressed by that, because I didn't have that. I didn't have a big following. I didn't have good engagement with my audience on Twitter. Twitter just wasn't really where our label folks were. They were more on Facebook, or they were in our email list, and they supported us in that way, and they supported us locally at shows. But Twitter, it wasn't really a huge part of our brand and my label. But it still kind of depressed me. It depressed me that I didn't have the same sort of following or engagement on Twitter than some of these other labels that I looked up to and I admired. And, comparing myself when it came to something that I wasn't good at or I wasn't passionate about, like the area of social media, obviously, that just hurt a lot, and it really just kind of messed with my brain. And that has huge implications because it affects on how creative you are and how productive you are. And so it took me a long time to kind of admire a label for something, but not feel like I needed to adopt that or to compete with that. And I think as I go through this, I hope you can think of examples and times where you've seen a label do something and you thought, oh, that's such a great idea. I wish I had thought of that. But you just need to kind of respect that and leave it there and go and be inspired to create your own thing and not try to compare ourselves and get into that thing. I've done this so many times. I've been running my label for 10 years, and I can't tell you how many times I saw a label. This was about 4 or 5 years ago. I saw a label launch a Patreon page, and I copied down all the gift offerings that they were giving their patrons. And I was like, this is going to be great for us. And I launched it. and it just didn't work out. It just wasn't right. I wasn't doing it right. I was copying them. I was being reactive instead of proactive. That's the whole issue that I'm talking about today, is that when we compare ourselves to others, it makes us reactive instead of proactive. And so I really want to encourage you to, instead of be competing, to be creating. So let's talk about, real quick, 3 ways that we can compare ourselves or measure ourselves against our peers and other record labels in a healthy way. By the way, if you're listening to this and you're not owning or starting a record label, and I know that some of our audience, I think maybe about a quarter or so, are DIY artists or musicians or people who are, kind of running their own label, but them as the only artists. I know you experience this too when it comes to other artists or other bands out there. So if you're self-running your own career and you see somebody else have success with Spotify playlists, or you see somebody else launch Twitch or do really well on social media, and you feel compelled to copy them, or you feel jealous of them, then this episode is for you as well. Hopefully you can pull something from this. It's not just for labels. It's also for anybody in the creative space. Here are some ways I think you can be healthy with copying people. Number 1, ask labels for advice. And I've said this on so many of these pieces that I've put together, but ask labels, because listen, this is what I do. This is what the podcast is about, is I email labels, huge labels, medium-sized labels, tiny little labels, and everybody has been remarkably generous with their time and with their wisdom. And everyone most everyone is excited to help the next generation of labels, or to help somebody who's struggling. Ask for help with specific areas. So if it's social media that you see other labels doing a really good job at, or if it's Spotify playlisting that you see other labels doing a really good job at, or maybe it's manufacturing vinyl and you can't seem to make the numbers work, then ask other labels or other people in the industry for advice on those specific topics. And so instead of seeing a label do really well on social media and getting jealous and trying to copy them, then actually reach out to them and say, hey, listen, this is something I struggle with. Can you give me some pointers? Give me some advice. And I bet you'll find a lot of these people are really generous with their time and with their wisdom. So that's the number 1 thing. And also, not just other labels, but you can call your pressing plant and tell them that you're struggling with making some of the numbers work, and ask them if they have any advice for you. If you want to print merch, T-shirts and sweatshirts and hats and stuff, then talk to the manufacturing, the apparel people, and ask them what experience they have with how to do a better job. And of course, because you're their customer, they'll be open to helping you. The second thing is to do your own research. I mean, if there's a new social media platform, if there's a new media format that's launching, be the first one to be there so that people look to you and admire you for that. And so do your own research, look at your own analytics, and explore some new ways for you to be innovative and creative in your own label. And the third and final thing is you can actually measure your success and productivity against your peers, but in a healthy way. And you can totally do that, and you can do that in a way that it doesn't affect your mental health, and you do that in a way where you respect and admire your peers, but you do so in a way where you can actually measure your success and measure your progress with some of your peers. And maybe you're open about it. Maybe you say, here are my numbers, here are your numbers. Can you help me grow together? Can we work together? Gosh, if there's a label in your town that's about the same size, or in your state or your country or something, try to work together with them. Try to share resources where you can grow together. I hope that you found this helpful. I know a lot of you out there struggle with comparing yourself, and I would say don't do it. Just don't do it. Work hard, identify this problem, and work hard to remove it and to manipulate it. And so to reach out to these people that you're jealous with, ask them for advice, to be creative together instead of competing with them. Be proactive ahead of time so that you're not reactive. If you see a label do something that you really admire, like a big holiday sale where they put all of their albums 50% off for the month of December, instead of dropping everything and doing the same thing, write a note to yourself and start planning for the following December and say, I want to do a sale that's right for our label because I was inspired by this label. So I know this is a problem for a lot of you. It's certainly a problem for me. If you have some ways that you have compared yourself to others, or if you have found a way to stop comparing yourself to others, please share it with me. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can leave a comment. You can leave a review in Apple Music or Apple Podcasts. You can email me, podcast@otherrecordlabels.com. You can also join our Facebook group, which is a private group for the listeners of the show who run labels or who are DIY artists thinking about running a label, or if you work at a label. You can join our Facebook group, and you can get that by going to facebook.otherrecordlabels.com. It'll take you right there. So thank you so much for listening. I'm excited to hear from you. I hope you found this encouraging and inspiring. That free guide I was talking about at the beginning, you can get that at otherrecordlabels.com along with all of our other resources. Thanks for listening.